Just a slight technical difficulty, but we've managed to walk through it. So I hope everybody's enjoyed a Easter break. And just thank you so much for joining us. I know that all of you have probably some very busy schedules. My name is Michael Kelsall. I am the Sustainability Partnerships Director for ISS UK and Ireland. And we do hope that the next half hour to 45 minutes is time well spent on what continues to be a topical subject. What we're hoping to do this year as an ISS Sustainability Services team this year and into the next really is support our customers with insight directly from our sustainability focused subject matter experts. And the plan is that this is going to be one webinar in a series focused on things like energy waste, carbon, social value, circularity, and hope that you continue to join us on this journey. And speaking of, you can expect an invitation to our Waste and Circularity webinar, which will be happening next month. I believe we've earmarked the 20th of May. So block out the 20th of May now for around 1 p.m. And you can expect to get some information. And please feedback if there's anything around this particular webinar that you'd like to feedback about, or if there's subjects in particular that are keeping you up at night. We're certainly happy to look into it, discuss it, and see if we can add another webinar as we walk through this. So today, I have two brilliant colleagues, one which I'm glad has now been able to attend, speaking from experience in what we are essentially calling an era of energy volatility. First, I just want to add a little context. Let me just quickly explain our continued partnership with Anthesis, a partnership which really began in late 2024 and continues today. And what we've essentially done is we've combined a great team of sustainability experts from ISS with that on-the-ground workplace understanding with a global sustainability advisory firm and Anthesis into creating what we believe is a partnership that is built for delivery. And it is actually from ISS and Anthesis that we have our two speakers, our subject matter experts, if you will, in all things energy and decarbonization. So Andrew, or Andy Pete, is the head of decarbonization and energy for ISS Sustainability Services, and Sonia Vaz-Martins is the technical director who supports energy and decarbonization from our partner Anthesis. Why we are here. You don't really have to go terribly far, stay long on your phone or on your social media to see that the recent headlines that continue stemming from what's happening within the Middle East. And obviously that's been exacerbating the effects of the already continued Ukraine war, which is now in its 4th year. We believe that we find ourselves now in a bit of an energy crisis and perhaps an era of continued uncertainty that could last for years, if not decades. Wholesale gas and oil prices are rising, with it surging past $100 just in March, and I believe now it's sitting somewhere between $96 and $100 today. And although LNG prices have recently declined, it remains volatile with sharp price changes due simply because of the geopolitical tensions, really. And we think that the disruption will continue, and who knows for how long, with the unrest in the Middle East being incredibly uncertain. But what we know, however, is that it isn't a challenge that's really going to go away anytime soon. And for all of you who support workplaces, manufacturing sites, hospitals, care centers, data centers, resilience is really crucial. And that's a word that you'll be hearing from us and used throughout this webinar. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to hand you over to the real expert, Andy Pete, to provide a bit of additional context. Over to you, Andy.
Thanks, Michael. And if anyone has any questions throughout this, please just drop them in the Q&A and we'll come to them at the end. Great stuff. So, as Michael was mentioning, I think everyone's fully aware that we've got an increase in oil, gas prices. It's at the forefront of everybody's mind. And, you know, these costs, they don't just have a price impact, the impact on our operations within our businesses, and we have that wider impact socially across colleagues, the people we're working with every day, throughout organisations. However, it is worth noting that while prices are rising again, and this is generating genuine concern, at the start of the year, before the conflict in the Middle East began, energy prices were still sitting around 14% higher than they were in 2021 prior to the outbreak of the war in Ukraine. So this is something that we very, very quickly normalised, become used to, but it does have an impact. Energy costs are no longer a manageable overhead. They're becoming a material business risk because they are so volatile and they are so high. They have a number of direct impacts, whether this is the cost pressure of the increased price that is needing to be paid to keep businesses running, the uncertainty that can provide. As Michael was mentioning, the prices at the moment are fluctuating daily, hourly, and these daily, hourly increases, decreases, they have a long-term effect when it's setting energy prices that at the moment people are predicting could continue for as long as 18 months. Operational decisions are then impacted by budget constraints, how the money's being spent, what the money's being spent on, and this can, come down to asset utilization, maintenance schedules, and even how services are being delivered. And it can impact competitiveness, compliance, because energy costs now sit alongside labour as a material differentiator, and decarbonisation expectations are continuing to rise, which again have a monetary value associated with them in the most part. So this puts pressure on where budgets need to be spent against where organisations want to be spending to, be doing the right thing, aligning to targets and meeting commitments that have been made in the past. So, in terms of what this means, we want to see what we can do, how we can address this, because although the UK is feeling these pressures, we actually are relatively not very reliant on the oil that is coming from the Middle East. However, the global impact, the global price, the markets that are being affected, this does have a material impact on our procurement strategies, our usage, and the cost that is being driven. So we're looking at this through three areas of, although the physical security of the UK supply is relatively stable, that price risk continues to be a major driver. So we're looking here in terms of what we can do to minimise impacts now. What are the short term, what are the immediate actions that could be taken, how we can build on this in terms of resilience, and then what can we do to prepare for tomorrow through the acceleration of electrification, low carbon generation, to take some of the control back, be less dependent on these external factors. So the focus of this today is, what does this mean for organisations? What are the practical actions that can be taken? As doing nothing is no longer a neutral option. By doing nothing, standing still, an impact will be felt, and you'll be impacted by the decisions of others. So more positively, there are actions, activities that can be taken that will deliver meaningful savings, some relatively quickly. I'd be surprised if some, if not most, are already implementing some of these strategies, and we've broken these down into these three areas that we discussed. So I'm going to focus now around minimising the impact, and then I'll pass on to Sonia to discuss building the resilience and preparing for tomorrow. So the first area I'm going to talk about is around energy procurement and assurance. Energy procurement, it's no longer just about chasing the lowest unit rate. It's about strategic procurement, improving budget certainty, and alleviating avoidable overpayments. So how we manage our procurement as a tool for managing cost and managing risk. As I said, it's not about this lowest rate. It's not about chasing that. It's about how we do this more strategically, understanding contract structures, what risk exposure, what flexibility is available, and then how can we align this strategy with avoiding reactive decisions, not being driven by the market headlines, but being driven through market intelligence, making informed decisions. Well-informed procurement decisions will reduce exposure to volatility and prevent being locked into poor positions at the wrong time. So that sounds great. Once a procurement strategy is in place, you're buying your energy at a reasonable rate, you're locked in for a good period of time and you're comfortable with the amount of risk that's being taken, that should be job done, hopefully. Unfortunately not. The next area feeding into the procurement is then how this can then tie into invoice validation and controlling your costs after procurement. Invoice validation, it's often overlooked, but it consistently uncovers value. Even well-procured contracts can fail to deliver value if the invoices and the charges that are being passed through are not controlled. Some common issues that can be identified: incorrect tariffs or pass-through charges, mistakes happen, estimated reads, where these are feeding through into invoices and then additional estimates and additional estimates after that can all have a real impact in terms of those incorrect tariffs or incorrect charges that are being invoiced. And then errors, capacity charges, standing charges, or even VAT, how these are applied on invoices, it can be incorrect. So having that robust invoice validation strategy in place can avoid, in some cases, overpayment by up to 5 to 10%, simply by having these rigorous checks of the invoices in place and the measures to push back where these errors are occurring and going through the sometimes painful but often rewarding process of engaging with the suppliers to ensure that refunds and correct charges are being applied. And it's not about disputing suppliers, it's about paying for what you're actually using at the rates that you have agreed. The final point there is how this feeds through to budgeting, forecasting, and accruals. If your invoices aren't correct and your data's not right, this then impacts on the ability to budget correctly, make these forecasts, and the correct accruals. So by having these processes in place through to your robust procurement, knowing exactly what you should be getting charged and for what, making sure that's correct, means that you can have that reliable forecasting in place, improved accrual accuracy at the end of the month, and reduce that financial uncertainty, which I think we can all agree, especially at the moment, is something that would be very beneficial. The impact of this then is stronger financial control and then fewer surprises in the long run. And this hopefully then frees up some additional budgets, additional capital for some of the other energy sustainability, decarbonisation plans and projects that want to be implemented. Moving on to the other area around minimising this impact now is through energy management. And I know it sounds simple, but we can't manage what we can't see. So the key starting point for good energy management is data. Not just utilising the data, but making sure that you have it available, that it's correct, and that you have it granular enough that it is providing real insight and value. This can be done through sub-metering, especially on high energy using equipment or critical systems. Moving from monthly billing to more regular consumption monitoring, be reliant on your own systems, your own data and your own analysis. Applying tools and systems to integrate exception-based reporting to be alerted proactively about anomalies or exceedances rather than having to go hunting for them. And then linking data to influencing factors such as occupancy, production, or other measures that might be applicable to your business, where you can see where our increases expected is a result of your increasing output, so there has to be an increased energy demand. And by applying these factors, you can apply this insight and validate your utility data, which then adds that benefit of the granularity, leads to easier issue detection, faster responses, and better decision making, which then can hopefully lead to any identified opportunities to implement optimization, reducing waste first. The fastest savings come from optimizing what you already have. And then this leads on to the quote at the top that, the cheapest kilowatt is the one that you don't have to buy and the kilowatts that you're not using. So by implementing a robust optimization strategy from correcting operation hours, optimizing heating, cooling set points, avoiding conflict between these systems and addressing poor control strategies through overridden or potentially outdated BMS strategies that haven't been kept up to date with occupancy, operational changes, these activities alone, through amending existing operations, can typically deliver between 5 and 15%. Principle, it's simple here that having the data, monitoring what you have, allows you to make these decisions, make these changes, and then once they're implementing and delivering this saving and this value, make sure that this is being sustained, that these are being delivered into the long term. And this is where the procurement, your bill validation, and your energy management all tie together through data to be able to make these informed decisions to deliver these benefits and make sure that they are continuing to deliver in the long term. The third element then around the energy management is behaviour and accountability. This is all great, but it can't be done in isolation. Technology alone is also not enough. Effective organisations are assigning that clear ownership for energy management, but then it's how that is then engaged through teams, through practical behaviour, or then even embedding energy performance, operational KPIs, and just making sure that stakeholders, building users, visitors are aware of the impact they can have, the strategies that are in place, why sites are operating as they are potentially, and then they can make informed decisions to make sure that while they're on premises, while they're using the buildings, they're doing so in an energy conscious way. We'll try to automate as much as possible, but this isn't always, it isn't always feasible. So it's about making sure that people have that understanding and can take that accountability to support with energy management. Small behavioural changes consistently applied, these compound. People see good practice, we see how other people are behaving in the office as well, and it does generate that culture and that understanding. And sustaining these, it's not then just a one-off initiative. Again, it continues to drive that behaviour and make sure that these savings can be sustained for the long term. The final point here is, again, how we align these measures on a day-to-day relating to energy resilience to decarbonisation strategies. Decarbonisation strategies and decarbonisation plans are long-term measures, but there are activities, things can be taking place today that can have an impact. So it's how we can be driving decarbonisation plans through, that immediate action, prioritising measures that reduce both the emissions and exposure. Avoiding short-term fixes, there's day-to-day work that needs to be taking place, but this is where the communication, the engagement is key. But there aren't decisions being made to fix a problem today that could have a long-term impact on decarbonisation strategies, because money's been invested, equipment's been deployed that isn't right, it isn't what's needed. It might be a short-term fix, it might make some noise go away today, but could have real tangible impacts on those longer-term decarbonisation strategies. And then planning your energy transition and how this is aligned for operational realities. So the works that are taking place, how this meets the business needs the best. And to expand on that further in terms of some of the activities that can be undertaken, I'll hand over to Sonia.
Great. Sonia, I'll drive for you because of our slight technical challenge. So you just tell me when you want to move the slide.
Yes, thanks, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. So this section will be focused on resilience and how to prepare for the future. And I will be reiterating some of the points mentioned by Andy, as minimizing impact and the subsequent decarbonization roadmaps are intertwined, particularly the data availability and collection. So how can data be used as a strategic defense? So granular measurements by building, floor tenant, or system turns the energy from a fixed overhead into a controllable variable, revealing when, where, and why consumption occurs. So it is important to remember that energy consumption means both heat and electricity. As such, granular data allows for energy reduction and efficiency measures to be identified. High-resolution energy data enables invoice validation, early default detection, and also investment-grade decarbonization pathways by reducing the financial, operational, and compliance exposure. So using sub-metering insights, organizations reduce demand in peak windows via batteries, BMS tuning, load shifting, and on-site generation, protecting against price volatility and capacity charges. So why is peak shaving part of the building resilience? So peak shaving enables battery storage and also hot water storage to capture surplus energy and discharge it during peak demand, increasing renewable utilization and reducing reliance on the grid electricity. Buildings that use stored energy through grid stresses, voltage dips, and demand spikes allow to improve the building operational and continuity. Peak demand windows are typically the most expensive, and buildings with on-site generation and storage can avoid these charges by offsetting consumption and with stored energy. So this means that the data collection and peak shaving lead to the development of investment-grade decarbonization pathways. So there is an increased need for assets to align with the tightening climate policies, energy performance standards, and carbon targets. And decarbonization pathways emphasize efficiency, electrification, renewable integration, and advanced controls, all of which reduce the vulnerability of the energy volatility and the extreme weather. So the pathways align with global standards, push buildings towards a resilient and near emission design. So to recap, so strengthening the resilience often means diversifying your supply and on-site generation. And this can be either achieved by data collection or by upgrading the infrastructure, which require capital. Building energy resilience comes often at a cost because it requires investments that go beyond the day-to-day operation. And these investments are often justified because the cost of inaction is far higher, but also because they lead to cost savings. And we have a couple of stories to share later on this presentation that demonstrate this. So if we move to the next slide, and it shows how we can basically prepare for tomorrow and build the resilience. So on-site generation such as solar PV, CHP, batteries, and microgrids significantly strengthens the building's ability to withstand the grid instability, outages, and escalating energy costs. Buildings that integrate on-site generation with battery storage or microgrid can island from the grid and continue operating during outages. Battery storage, paired with renewables, is viewed as an essential in supporting a resilient low-carbon future. Energy price volatility is a growing threat to operational continuity, and on-site generation smooths the costs by supplying predictable locally produced power. Furthermore, and in some instances, it can be a revenue generating opportunity for some. Financial resilience obviously is part of the energy resilience, and stable energy costs protect budgeting and operations. With modern buildings increasingly requiring high power reliability, and we're talking here about data centers, hospital, manufacturing plants, local generation can reduce this reliance and increasingly stress national grids. Whilst in the UK, a stressed national grid is not yet evident, electrification will definitely accelerate this. Resilient buildings will contribute to resilient cities. Pairing generation with smart controls enables buildings to actively respond to grid conditions. This might look futuristic, but implementation is growing. And I'm conscious that site generation, battery storage, and microgrids are solutions that, depending on the building specifics, might not be feasible for everyone. But it is important to remember that buildings extend not to just offices, but hospitals, airports, data centers, and other critical infrastructure. And the preparing for tomorrow also implies looking at heat reuse and recovery and making use of technologies such as heat pumps, but also looking at fuels or biofuels. And some of you can say that these fuels are not exempt from price escalation as the higher oil and gas prices impact cost of fertilizers and crops. And you're not wrong, but the impact is not as significant as the biggest scale for biofuels is scalability. And however, this scalability issue is not valid for biomethane, for example, which is a renewable gas with a composition very similar to natural gas. And its production is now at scale. It integrates into existing thermal processes, it leverages on the current gas infrastructure, and it allows for gradual non-disruptive transitions. biomethane has become an obvious solution for assets with limited options to decarbonize. And companies such as PepsiCo, AstraZeneca, Mars are examples of companies that recently announced the use of this biofuel as part of their decarbonization roadmap and operational resilience. And I appreciate that I appreciate that these are industrial clients, but these are companies that have implemented this solution, and some tech companies are also looking at it for data centers. For the offices, the implementation is more at a site-specific level and needs to be looked into more detail to check its feasibility and applicability. So moving on, I guess it's worth noting that in the preparing for tomorrow, is worth noting the ESOS, or the Energy Savings Opportunity Scheme. So ESOS is a mandatory energy efficiency compliance scheme. However, its audits and requirements play a strategic role in both decarbonizing and on the energy resilience planning for large entities. ESOS requires organizations to audit their buildings, but also transport and industrial processes, with the purpose to identify practical, financially viable energy savings opportunities. These opportunities inherently reduce energy waste and therefore carbon emissions. The Phase 4 guidelines are yet to be released, but assuming that these are very similar to Phase 3, they will include mandatory action plans and a clear integration with long-term net zero trajectories. So why does it matter? It matters because it's mandatory for many organizations. It has a qualification date of December 2026, or later this year, with a deadline for reporting 1 year later. And it does create, a strong foundation for efficiency and decarbonization efforts. What it means for you, it means that it helps you identify significant energy usage, it supports target savings opportunities, and it helps reducing the audit burden and compliance and risk. As I mentioned before, it goes beyond energy usage in buildings. It also assesses transport and industrial processes. Worth noting if you're in scope, so if you have more than 250 employees, a turnover higher than 44 million and a balance sheet higher than 38 million, you will be in scope and you'll be required to do the reporting. However, is worth noting that public sector organizations are exempt, or generally exempt of these, basically this reporting. And organizations that have a certified energy management ISO 50001 are also exempt from audits. However, they must submit a notification of compliance to the regulator or the EA. Worth noting that some public sector buildings carry out ESOS aligned audits to support efficiency programs and their net zero aspirations, but this is voluntary, not regulatory. So as a recap, whilst ESOS is governed by detailed and legally prescribed steps, bespoke energy assessments follow no mandatory national framework. However, they are very similar in terms of scope. And bespoke energy audits can go through a higher level of detail, but site-specific and provide site-specific insights for ESOS that relies on the measure of total energy usage. So in a nutshell, ESOS and bespoke audits complement each other, with the key difference being that ESOS is mandatory and has a 4-year reporting cycle. And I guess with this, Michael, we move to a few stories and practical examples.
Thanks, Sonia. Just got a case study up here just to build on some of the elements we were talking around earlier around energy management and specifically energy optimization. Just to highlight that where this has been implemented, we had a customer who was facing a similar challenge around rising costs across a large estate and looking for solutions to deliver quick wins, energy savings, but also how this can support some of the areas we're talking around long-term resilience. As we see, this project started in 2022, and some of the savings have been delivered both in terms of energy, delivering a reduction and a sustained savings just short of 30 gigawatt hours, has a real impact. It's got a pound saving, which is great in terms of that's money that is coming off, can be spent elsewhere. There is that carbon reduction, and then there's other benefits to deploying energy management techniques, having energy managers having the data available to produce these savings, around feeding in through capital projects other opportunities that both support continued optimization, enable optimization to go just beyond looking at existing controls, and then can feed into areas around decarbonisation and more innovative strategies where this deployment can be aligned on a more strategic level, both in terms of driving energy savings faster, but supporting with decarbonisation and increasing resiliency for organisations going forward. Michael, can we go on to the next one? Thank you.
Sonia, you want to walk us through this one?
Sure. So this is very similar to the previous story or case study that Andy has mentioned. So this practical example builds on the energy efficiency measures, identifying subsequent larger but feasible investments in the energy infrastructure. So this is an example of a tailored solution that allows clients to move towards budgeting and implementation. And the challenge here is a very common ambition, achieve a 50% reduction by 2030. And as a solution, our decarbonization engineers visited site, perform a thorough audit of the energy generation, distribution and usage, so reviewing the data related to the energy consumption and occupancy. And based on this, a set of energy efficiency and decarbonization interventions were developed, what we call a long list to short list solutions. And our recommendations close the client emissions gap to almost 50%, contributing to the overall reductions required by 2030. And then based on these energy efficiency measures, a number of capital projects were then proposed. And I think it's worth noting as a key point, and why we talk so much about energy efficiency. It is important to assess the energy usage before looking at investing in any equipment in infrastructure. We don't want to over-engineer a solution, as it will cost more to implement and probably make any project unfeasible. So the key is always determining a practical and feasible solution as part of energy and emissions assessment. And I guess with this final point, I pass to Michael just to wrap up, because I'm conscious of time.
Thank you very much, Sonia, and thank you, Andy, as well. I will just summarize, and then we can have a look and see if there's some questions within the Q&A forum. I'm happy to answer any of those. So, energy, volatility, it's not going away, but with the right measures, you can absolutely take greater control. Reducing that avoidable energy waste today will clearly strengthen resilience for tomorrow within your office space, within workplaces, within your hospitals, manufacturing sites. And as we all know, anybody that works in sustainability, data is king, and good data can really enable confident decision-making, wiser investments, and that long-term and all needed stability. Small operational actions now will build the foundation for deeper decarbonization later, certainly if you're unlocking additional budget. So if you're reducing your energy consumption and saving money in some places, then the hope is that money can then be shifted over to actually to support a successful decarbonization plan. And then before undertaking any significant capital investment, ensure that data is in place, and that you have undertaken some form of energy optimization. Before we move into the Q&A, just a quick note that we will follow up after today's session with some information and links, guidance, everything that we've covered. And if you would like to dive any deeper into any of these topics, or just talk through your own challenges, we would love to chat with you. So please do reach out. And we'll now just take some questions via the Teams chat. Feel free to drop them in. If you have any questions now, please do. If not, that's okay. Did field a question from one of our customers actually today, who's not able to attend. She actually works within the NHS, and I thought her question was quite good. So we can maybe start with that and see if anything else comes through. Is that all right? Sonia and Andy? Yeah. Okay. Her question was, as the NHS faces increasing pressure on budget and energy volatility, how can the healthcare sector specifically go beyond cutting energy consumption, but actually taking a holistic view of estates to ensure that continuity of care during periods of energy uncertainty? Who would like to answer that question? And did you understand the question?
I suppose. Oh, sorry, sorry. No.
No. Sorry. Well, it's quite a complex question, I guess, and probably there's no straightforward answer there. I think that one of the first elements, obviously, is treating energy infrastructure as clinical infrastructure, isn't it? And the majority of I guess, the NHS organizations already do this to a degree. But that is how to turn some of these infrastructure into renewable energy supply, which involves certain elements of redesign, I guess. But I think we need to acknowledge that not all hospital spaces are equal, and sometimes that we need to redesign some of these estates or prioritize some of the zones in terms of critical elements. So while sometimes a redesign element could be complicated, if you treat some of these in stages and prioritize some of these more critical infrastructures in terms of redesign, given that there's budget constraints and you cannot do it all at once, sometimes it could be a way of moving forward. And I guess as well, obviously behavior is key, so I guess educating or having staff influencing the energy demand usage in the workplace, it will be quite key as well in terms of energy reduction. Anyway, these are my initial thoughts, but not entirely sure.
That's
And
great.
if you have anything else to add.
I was going to say, so you touched on a lot of the points I was going to say. I think the key piece to all this is none of this should be implemented and have an impact on what organisations are trying to deliver in the day-to-day operation. It should be enhancing that, whether it's making environments more suitable, more pleasurable. But it's back to that data piece of, with the question of, let's assume it was a hospital that is, back to some point, a big site, and it's having that data to break down the challenge of understanding where criticality, operational pressures need to be understood, but then there are easier areas, quicker wins, and it's how you prioritize that focus and that activity to, although we didn't want to look at energy consumption, it doesn't necessarily need to be a either or, it needs to be prioritizing what different areas, different operational focuses are, and then applying the right solution to address the challenges and hopefully be able to do as much as possible in the areas. But that comes down to the data, the understanding, and then that engagement and the buy-in from stakeholders to be able to implement these plans and strategies.
Okay, great. Well, I am conscious of time. I don't see any other questions come through, but please, if you do have any questions that you were maybe not able to ask today, then we're certainly happy to answer those at any time. I'll just say thank you very much again. Thanks for taking the time. If you're just back from holiday, welcome back to work. Yeah, look forward to hearing more from you. Please do feedback. And if there's any subject, again, that is that you think is worth discussing, or you'd like to just throw into the hat, then just let us know, because we're happy to have a conversation around it. Thanks again. I'll let everybody get back to their job. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.